All right, Planeswalkers. Good or bad for Magic?
They're all I've ever known. I love Planeswalkers. I run them in most of my decks.
Bah,
Really? Really?
bah.
You don't think so?
I think once upon a time, Planeswalkers were great for Magic.
Okay.
And I think they did a lot for Magic as far as providing reoccurring characters that we still remember.
What was that once upon a time? Were you referring to a set, a block? Like, what are you thinking?
I'm almost thinking about like how much Commander has taken over the Magic community and how Planeswalkers don't fit very well in this Commander format.
You think that they're specifically designing them for Commander and it's killing the other formats or it's hurting them?
No, not necessarily. I honestly think that they're healthier in other formats to a point. There's some like this guy right here in Limited.
Professor in Standard is like, I have 4 copies of it, right? Like, this is what I run because I know it's really good. Yeah, they're game defining, especially in Limited. We know that. We played that event at MagicCon Vegas and Grist just owned the board.
This is true. How much do we want one permanent to hijack a game?
When you say hijack, do you mean like from a life standpoint or just from I have to remove it as quickly as possible? The next 2 turns are just this.
It becomes the instant removal. Like it becomes the target on the table. It has everything attached to it too. Most good Planeswalkers, all the good Planeswalkers are going to have card draw, removal, and something that says I win the game on it.
Or be a combo piece. Right? And some, because it's like the second they drop, they don't have summoning sickness, they can just do their thing immediately.
Yeah, and maybe this isn't a Planeswalker's problem, because power creep has been
all permanents.
We're seeing that happen. Planeswalkers in a Commander format, they create such a decision tree for players.
It's analysis paralysis.
Exactly.
And you would know of all people. You run what? You run Super Friends.
I have a Super Friends deck. I have a Stacks Super Friends Pramicon deck.
It's not the problem at the table at all.
Yeah, and I find myself stuck in situations where I'm like, all right, I want to make the most optimal play. I need to win. And
that sucks to hear because you've been playing since Ice Age. So you are what I refer to as a seasoned player. So if you're having those decisions, newer players that sit at the table, newer players that throw 4 or 5 Planeswalkers into a deck, I see what you're saying. It's going to slow everything down.
Exactly. And what format are most new players jumping into?
Commander?
Yeah, maybe not rightfully so.
Not rightfully so. And I will die on that hill. I think every player should be playing Limited or Standard first before Commander. And I know people are going to hate that and they're going to call me out on it. But Commander is the culmination of so many different formats into one.
Yeah. Well, people want to play with their friends.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to go to an LGS and sit across from a stranger. It's not as comfortable sitting across 1v1 versus a stranger who's probably been playing Magic for a decade and I'm just jumping into it. Let's play Modern.
Yeah.
Like, let me spend 1,000.
Let me hand you my Amulet Titan deck and see if you can pilot it.
Absolutely. People want to play with their friends and it's like, okay, let's get together, play Commander. And that's already complicated enough. Creatures, instants, the stack. And then you throw a card at them like this. That's got 4 different abilities.
Yeah.
There's a +2 on here. There's a 0 on here.
Yeah.
There's this funky little number 5 down in the right corner. You got to explain all of the different types of cards to a new player and throw in a Planeswalker and see how that works.
When you're teaching, do you explain to new players that this is your friend? And what I mean by that is you're a Planeswalker in the game. This is your
ally maybe a good
contractually obligated associate.
Yeah.
This is another you. And I tried to explain that to the wife who I taught how to play.
Yeah.
She does not get it. She does not get the fact that that's why you can attack this separate life points than you, and it keeps you alive for like a turn or 2 longer.
I think that's a great way to explain Planeswalkers to new players. Just getting back to the point, like I think that's just another thing that you have to. We're already playing a 1v1v1v1 game, and now there's this like little side ally that I've got to protect and.
Sometimes people just forget about it. If there's complicated board states, sometimes a Planeswalker it falls off the radar until it ults and it ends the game the next time.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Did Planeswalkers improve Magic the game or Wizards marketing?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Here's how I think about it. When Planeswalkers were first introduced, it was Lorwyn, and it was a card that nobody had ever seen before with these plus and minus abilities. It was a very special event.
Yeah.
And then it became, there's too many of them. Like, they're almost doing this with legendary creatures now, I feel like, where you don't have a handful of legendary creatures each set.
Yeah.
There's like common legendary creatures.
You're getting overrun with legendary creatures all the time. It feels like Brave New World. Yeah, I totally get that. You were around for when Planeswalkers. I came in shortly after Planeswalkers were introduced. At least that's when I was introduced into Magic. Do you remember all of the old heads saying, this is the end of Magic. This is the nail in the coffin. This is what seals the game.
I felt like there was always like a preview to a card that like would bring like about some sort of doomsday.
Massacre Worm, the game will never come back.
The game's never gonna come back from this.
Yeah.
So I do remember a lot of that talk. I also remember that a lot of excitement too. There's no way for a game to progress unless you're exploring new mechanics, new game space that hasn't been explored before. There's a fun explorative thing about bringing about a new card that's like, okay, we don't know what this is going to do to the game, but we got to try.
But you do have to make a differentiation between new mechanics and new card types. New card types are rare, few and far between. You have battles, and a lot of people still don't like battles. You have planeswalkers. You have what are some other new?
There's
card
sagas.
Types? Sagas are a great example, although they've been very well done. You got to admit,
I like
sagas are firmly cemented.
I agree.
If they introduced a new card type every set, that would be disastrous. But they can introduce new mechanics every set without an issue. And so, did they do Planeswalkers right when they introduced them? Or was it too close on the heels of some other stuff?
It's been a slow decline for Planeswalkers over the years. I feel like, honestly, the release of Planeswalkers was done really well.
What do you mean decline? You mean like in number, in power, in like what?
Well, you're still getting overpowered Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
I mean, think Oog and Eye of the Storms, think Elspeth, Stormslayer.
Professor's pretty damn good. It's really dense right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Power is up and down. It's almost just we're to capacity where it's not a special event anymore. It's not something people still look at Planeswalkers and they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I want that card from the set. But it's not like before when there was only 5 released. So there was five original Planeswalkers. They were all monocolored. You had Jace, you had Garruk, you had Ajani, you had Liliana, and there's one more that I'm just completely forgetting.
What color didn't you mention?
Chandra.
When did that change? That changed in War of the Spark, where you had so many. Was it War of the Spark, where so many Planeswalkers were released all at once that they were getting passed in draft, and people were confused? The Planeswalker would come to you third in the draft, and you'd be like, "What the heck? Why is this Planeswalker right here?" Type thing.
I'm thinking more so of like when Kasmina, like think about like these other Planeswalkers that you haven't heard of, or like you hear very little of.
The ones that are all desparked.
Dovin.
Dovin.
Kasmina.
Ready.
Yeah, at that point it doesn't feel, it's like, can anybody just be a Planeswalker? Like, are we just allowing people, like, is this supposed to be like another tier? Is this supposed to be the tippity cream of the crop of our Magic characters?
I will say, it feels like Wizard self-corrected because it desparked all of them. Like, they are back to legendary creatures now, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And being an older player, I also believe that War of the Spark was probably some of the best storytelling that Magic has ever done. I know this is maybe a little controversial.
Over Urza's Saga?
I think so. Urza is, I don't know, arguably one of the most popular characters or identifiable characters in the Magic universe. Do you think he was dethroned by Jace?
In the recent sets, yeah, because Jace became an edgelord and everybody's so concerned about what he's doing. But also, his storyline, Urza's storyline completed, right? Like, everyone knows what happened with Urza, and Jace's is still ongoing. Theoretically, it's going to complete with Reality Fracture.
I would love that. The storylines have too heavily relied on these characters. Was there a point where Magic already had legendary creatures and already had a cast of some sorts with like the Elder Dragons and their legendary creatures, but then they needed like main characters, like so important that they needed their own card type?
Yeah, because think about it. We have so many legendary creatures, and regardless of whether or not you think that's a good thing, because I'll admit, the fact that there's entire Legendaries Matter decks is a thing. It's a lot. But the fact of the matter is the main characters are the ones who, they're Planeswalkers, who I know to be aware of. And even though the story has gotten convoluted, like Liliana disappeared for a little while, Jace disappeared for a little while, being a little edgelord, all these characters are kind of gone and back again. we still had those main characters that I can fall back on as a Magic player who's only ever known Planeswalkers.
And here's a point where I will actually agree with you on there. And I think War of the Spark did a good job of kind of trimming the fat with by desparking some of the Planeswalkers, because there was a point where it was like, all right, is everybody just gonna be a Planeswalker?
Yeah, we had like Daretti, we had Aminatu, we had all these crazy Planeswalkers.
Yeah, Tyvar Kel.
Did they actually help the storyline at all?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, if I can't think of a reason why they did, then probably not.
Okay, yeah. No, that tracks.
What they did with the storytelling and getting other people in Magic engaged in like these protagonists that they wanted to see reoccurring, they did really, really well. And I think they may have done it so well that they saw an avenue for Universes Beyond.
Ooh. Okay. Do you think this is going to ruffle some feathers here? Do you think when they finish Reality Fracture and maybe the multiverse either expands or contracts or whatever they're thinking, that's going to open Planeswalkers from the planes of New York City or the Shire, or
we're gonna see Spider-Man as a Planeswalker.
We're gonna see Spider-Man as a Gandalf as a Planeswalker. Like things
I think
like
people would lose their mind
in a good way or a bad way.
Well, there's always gonna be good and bad. I think if it was Gandalf, it'll be more so in a good way.
So what's the solution? Is it just to make a Planeswalker with less options? Is that going to make it healthier in Commander?
I mean, that would be a start. But then you fall into the trap where it's like usually when you only got one ability on a Planeswalker, there's a static ability there.
Yeah, and they've tried that. Like cards like Ashiok, or what's the one that's on the Game Changers list?
Narset. Yeah. And that turned out to be, that's a game changer, and it's turned out to be miserable to play against. It turns out people like drawing cards and take that away from somebody, and there's going to be an issue.
Who was it that is actually just banned outright because of that exact same Leovold Atrost? Yeah. Okay. It just banned outright. I think the only reason that is because readily accessible?
That would be my assumption. I think you can put it in the command zone. You know that for a fact you're going to play that. People see it and groan. They're like, oh, okay. Let me not draw any cards this game and see if I win.
Okay, so I guess the continuation of that is, if Reality Fracture is Planeswalker heavy, where you have like a white and a black Liliana, or you have all of these other things that are side by side with each other, and we enter another period where you have Ickermoon Gauntlet or Oath of Teferi, is that going to be inherently healthier or unhealthier for the current formats, Commander included?
Do we want to give Planeswalkers more options? And just based off those examples you gave, like that's exactly what those cards do. It's like, let's add a few abilities to my already 4 abilities that I have on my Planeswalker, or give them to do it more than once each turn.
Like a doubling season, basically.
I don't know. Have you ever played against an Urza? That like the meld Urza?
Okay. I played against you. Have I ever? You know the answer to that question. You play that deck. Oops, all Urzas. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's a different win con for me, though. I'm not really playing the same game. We're not playing. All I'm trying to do is meld.
No, Urza. Yes, I have, and it's hard. Once you get that meld off, the game is over. There's just no coming back from it.
But again, I'm sucking all of the time into that card, because the card itself says. Yeah. You can take down his ability more than once each turn. So there's that. Or there's a Teferi out there where you can do his abilities at instant speed and do them on every single turn.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. You know what? Something we haven't talked about, I'm going to blindside you with this a little bit, is Planeswalkers and emblems. You want to talk about a broken mechanic? 99% of emblems come from Planeswalkers. That is inherently unhealthy. So I will say that. Should we see more emblems on Planeswalkers?
No. I'm going to say no right off the bat. I don't want to see more Planeswalkers, so I don't want to see more emblems. I'm okay with a few specific emblems that are going to end the game faster. There's some emblems that you get that like each turn players lose 2 life. Yeah. Or like at the beginning of your that's your Chandra emblem. Yeah. So I like that because it's like counteracting the time that it takes to, decide what you're going to do with your Planeswalkers. You're like, oh, okay, well, I know damage is going to happen every turn. Yeah. So I like emblems in that vein, but you're right. I think emblems there's no way to interact with them right now. Or is there a single way?
There's one single way. It's you Karn, and then you ultimate the Karn to go ahead and reset the game entirely.
There's one way to...
one way.
to start the game over. Yeah. So basically, Okay.
Unhealthy. I see what you're saying there. Okay, that answers that question. I just have a bone to pick with emblems, that's all. Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
So the final point here is, I guess, if we have our Planeswalkers and they've been storytelling elements thus far, and we wrap this current arc and they potentially move into Universes Beyond's Planeswalkers, is there a way to do them right, and is it only simplify the abilities?
Simplifying the ability takes away from like what makes them special. So then you're just creating an enchantment. Wizards have pigeonholed themselves now. Like there's no returning to a Magic before Planeswalkers. I don't think they're like we're gonna get to a point where it's like, okay, Planeswalkers are completely gone from gameplay. What they could go back to is make them more event cards. Like they need to become special again. They need to become more rare. We don't need to see any more uncommon Planeswalkers.
So not like 1% type thing.
Yeah.
I would say out of many of the archetypes of new cards or card types, I would say Planeswalkers is one of the most mature. They've had the most time to kind of dial it in. I see a trend towards the positive where when I play a Planeswalker, they still feel special. And maybe it's because there's a lack of removal. Maybe it's because, they cost a lot of money and I had to spend that in order to play them. I don't know. I still see the trend towards special. Towards special.
I like what you said about removal there. I think Wizards has an opportunity to kind of right the ship a little bit by adding a little bit more Planeswalker removal. There's Hero's Downfall, there's Sheoldred's Edict, there's a few ways to remove Planeswalkers, but it's not as abundant as creature removal. And I don't know if it needs to reach that level either. Like that's part of the reasons why creatures are vulnerable and they're not as cannot be as powerful as a card type is because like they're the easiest thing to remove on the board. Yeah. So it doesn't need to reach that point, but we need to get closer to that point.
Yeah. Well, in a hot take, Wizards actually, I think, started that because of Earthbending, because there's so much granular removal that says like non-land or target permanent or whatever, and they can't say that anymore because Earthbent lands still do work, especially in a Badger Mole Cub meta, right? And so now they have to get less granular where they either say like just general creature removal and they can't specify land or non-land, or just permanent removal in general. Permanent exile type thing, at which point it affects the Planeswalkers. So yeah, we're trending that way.
Oh, we've got a special guest here.
Yeah, he's what Planeswalker would you be? He'd be an Ashiok.
I hate to say it, I'm Narset.
Absolutely would be.
I'm Narset.
I think I would be. Who's married to Tomek again? Rao.
Rao.
I'd be Rao. Yeah. Do we know a person who would be an Ugin?
Is there a person alive who is Ugin?
What about an Urza? Is there a person who'd be an Urza? We're shooting the shit at this point, but I'm okay with it. This is a good like outro. We could just like
who's Urza?
Fade out.
I picture Ward as Urza.
Ward's a good Urza. I like that. That's really good.